his own legend. You have walked into the room of Fireback Radio. You can find us online at firebackradio.com. And of course, I'm your host, Brother Marquis.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Brother Marquis on another Fireback Radio broadcast. Today is the 7th of March. Of course, I had to pause there because in my head, I'm thinking it's May already. I'm still counting. January, February, March. It's the third month. Today, y'all, we're going to talk about the train incident, the derailment in New Palestine, Ohio. And today it's actually a month later, I believe, that this train derailment happened, and the cleanup is going on as we speak. What's interesting, though, about this whole situation is, a lot of people would bring up the whole conspiracy talk, right? And they come to me, Brother Marquis, because, that apparently is my wheelhouse. I didn't want to deal with it, at least not like that. But because I'm a thinker, thinkers usually ask the hard questions. And this whole time, I wanted answers. I was curious as to what actually happened out there, because there's a lot of stories that surround this incident. And the first thing is that how often do we have train derailments? That was the first question that I asked. And, of course, through the wonderful technology, I looked it up. And come to find out that train derailments actually happen more times than what you would like to think. It's just that this one in New Palestine, Ohio, this one is devastating. We don't really hear about the rest of them on a national scale unless something major happens like this. Train derailments happen about 3 times a month on average. Some of which are handled, without issue, while others, like this, New Palestine, has everyone scratching their heads. I mean, something as large as a train, which can stretch for a mile or 2 or even more, could just flip over, could just derail itself. And these trains, of course, are carrying, anything: cars, pet food, home goods, industrial waste, chemicals, ammonia, natural gas, oil. I mean, these guys carry everything. I'm in the transportation industry myself. Let me pat myself on the back, because I've been here for 21 years, and I understand the nature of the beast for the most part. It's never easy to see an accident happen, especially one on this scale. But it's just a curiosity to me, because when you're hauling hazardous materials, at least on the trucking side of it, you're forced to go around the town, go around the towns, go around the beltway, because they don't want that crap cutting through. Some of you truck drivers, you know what I'm talking about. They don't want y'all cutting through the middle of town. That's a big no-no. I mean, if you're in Atlanta, they don't want big trucks going through the middle of town, anyway. It doesn't matter what you're carrying, unless you're doing a local delivery. Part of that is because of the whole hazardous materials thing. They do not want a large incident to happen in a major metropolitan area. And maybe that's why this situation in New Palestine maybe didn't get the proper press that it was supposed to get. Because right now, those people are feeling like everybody else forgot them. They're not getting the proper attention. That's how they feel. At least that's what the reports say. They are not happy about this. Part of the reason why is because they've had at least 2 or 3 other train derailments happen within the United States since the top of February, when this one in New Palestine had happened. There was one in Nebraska, derailed, had coal on it. Coal is coal. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you're not going to light up the whole farm with coal. It is what it is. I think there was one in Florida. Florida had ammonia nitrate, I believe. I don't recall if that exploded like the one in New Palestine. And to top that one off, in Ohio, Springfield, if I'm not mistaken, get them hands. Whew. Springfield, Ohio, they had another one. There you go with the average right there. There you go. But this one right here is on a massive scale. A massive scale. Just ridiculously large. The interesting thing too about this is when you were at the top side of this story, you had the train derailment, you had the contamination, and you had the misdirection, because you've read a lot of stories. You've read a lot of stories that gave so many different accounts of this situation. It was crazy. Some people say, "Oh, it's not a big issue." No, don't worry about it. It's cool. We got it under control. But they didn't have it under control. This whole area should be under quarantine. This whole area should be under quarantine, period. Now, not just the city. And I've heard somebody say Ohio should just be shut down. I think they're just hating on Ohio. But if you were looking at the weather maps, I think NOAA had a projected path of where this cloud was going to go. And this projected path was literally from northeast Ohio throughout West Virginia, all the way to eastern Virginia, and maybe tips of North Carolina. And it goes from there all the way up to the East Coast. I'm talking the entire state of New York, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, Jersey, New York. I said that, I think, already. Even hit Nova Scotia, Canada, the whole nine. I was trying to figure out how far out over the Atlantic it was going to go. Was it going to go to the Bahamas? We don't need no problems. We all need a place to go. Fallout. But that's what it was. And even during that time where this plume was happening, people around the country on the East Coast saw stuff falling from the sky. I mean, miles away. As a matter of fact, there was somebody who was about maybe 100 miles south that I know personally, who said that there was something coming out of the sky and they were told to shelter in place until they figured out what was the problem. I believe even as far as Baltimore, people saw stuff falling from the sky. At least if it was in raindrops, they saw the discoloration as it discolored the paint. Not discolored the paint, but the discoloration in the water, in the liquid on their cars. There was a lot of misdirection, and I'm hoping that you're going to get the proper information. That's actually why I'm here. I'm here to give you a little taste of what I've seen over the time. If things have reached to that level of pollution, contamination, Norfolk Southern is going to have to, they're going to have to come out of pocket big time. Because if this plume reached literally to the Atlantic Ocean, Norfolk Southern is to blame. And okay, somebody might say, oh, it's just stuff like this happens. Dude, this averages 3 times a month that a train derails. Now, it's not just Norfolk Southern. But the last one that was in Springfield, Ohio, they actually got that derailment on a dash cam because it happened at a cross area where cars were. And as this train traveled down the track, it looked like it hit a speed bump. Next thing you know, the whole thing just comes off like, like a car with bad shocks going over a speed bump and just couldn't handle it. Derailed. In some of the reports I've seen, it's that Norfolk Southern has a policy or has such actionable measures to where when the train crew has an issue, they'll call it in. And the people who are at the control booth, they will give the determination on whether to proceed or not. In this case, the media report said that, once they found an issue, it was too late. But earlier reports that I've read said that, hey, they had enough time to make a call and they said to keep going. Now, until it actually comes out on mainstream, we'll just call this conspiracy. It may not even come out on mainstream because there's going to be such a crazy outcry because this is ridiculous. The train has a bunch of sensors, and sometimes, you know how you do with a check engine light. you know what you do with a check engine light. Yeah, we'll make it down there real quick. Just keep on going. No problem. I've heard that these engineers were even threatened that, hey, you might lose your job if you stop this train. We got to keep this thing going. In the transportation industry, we are told that freight has to move. And that was apparent because as the train stayed laying on the ground, still dripping and bleeding and oozing content, those train tracks were rebuilt. Trains were moving on the tracks, going right through the area of that should have been quarantined. It should have been like a no trespass. But money trumps people. Money trumps places. Money trumps things. Money is money. Freight got to move, so get out of the way. That's the transportation industry right there. And if you didn't believe it then, you should believe it now because that's exactly what happened in New Palestine. Like I said, I've been in trucking for 20 years. And this is what they say. They don't give a crap if 8 feet of snow on the ground. Freight got to move. Move that thing. So if we go over the cliff, oh, well, it's insurable. That's how they treat us. It's insurable. Meanwhile, you're not getting paid that much money to risk your life. And I'm sure these guys in this train wasn't getting paid enough to risk the people of New Palestine's lives. But somebody's going to have to pay. And I hope the crew is the last to catch it because the crew gets their answers from somebody above them. But in that same breath, if you're the captain of the ship and if you don't stop it, that falls on you. And the company can have plausible deniability because, hey, you're the captain, right? That's how they treat you. You are a throwaway. You know what I'm saying? When you are in command of one of these chemical vessels, you are replaceable. Ask me how I know. But this stuff is out of hand. And once this thing turned over, it wasn't as bad until they set fire to it. Vinyl chloride, y'all, a toxin, creates more toxins when on fire. Chernobyl ain't got nothing on this because Chernobyl, at least you got 50 years. It'll come back later. But this crap right here, it ain't coming back. It ain't coming back. And this cloud went all over the eastern seaboard. So if the people are planting food in the ground, when it rains and that cloud was above your head, it's now on the ground. It's now in the ground. So any plant that you decide to grow and eat, you're contaminated. If your cows are eating the grass, They're contaminated. You eat the cows, comes back to you. You're now contaminated. This is insane. I want you to look up a word. When they lit this fire, they created what they call a dioxin. Dioxin. Look that word up. That should be the word for the day, word for the month. It's like Vietnam all over again. It's crazy. That's how they treated this area. And these freaking politicians ought to be ashamed of themselves. When people need help, the expectation is the government would come help you. And when they don't come and help you, you're like, well, what am I paying taxes for? If nobody's going to do their job, and a lot of these guys, they'll come just for the photo op, or they won't. Meanwhile, we have a president sending billions of dollars to the Ukraine. And most of us didn't even know where the Ukraine was until somebody said Russia was bad and they're going to do bad things to Ukraine. We don't know where the freaking Ukraine was, but they're sending money over there, your taxpayer money. Meanwhile, Flint, Michigan still can't drink the water. And now this. If we had real service in this country, the government should have stopped all of that train action going through there. Be like, nope, we're cutting all this off. Nope. You're going to have to find a way around. Whoever's receiving that freight, y'all going to have to wait a little longer because the train got to go around. It's ridiculous. Right now is, like I said, this is the beginning of March. Right around the March 7th. And I've been hearing about early on, like a week or so ago, that they were shipping the contaminants out of that area into 2 or 3 different states. Indiana, where I am, is one of them. And then they stopped because apparently they measured it and it was really jacked up. So they stopped shipping. I don't understand how you could have a train track and not have the facilities to deal with something like this if it happens in your state. Every state should have a situation that could handle this. But apparently it doesn't happen, so they got to ship it out of state. As of today, or as of this week rather, Norfolk Southern agrees to pay East Palestine residents for relocation so they can clean up all of the contamination. And again, if you're listening to the stories, some people say, oh, it's not as bad as it is. It's bad. It's bad. This is a forever toxin. And it is what it says it is. It's a forever toxin. It ain't going nowhere. And when they blew this thing up, they allowed it to get into the water table. And you got over 14 states affected by this mess right here, right now. And Norfolk Southern just now decided to say, hey, we'll take care of the residents. We'll pay to play. You know what I'm saying? Come on, guys. Right now, dude, you should have got them out as soon as this thing happens. What's crazy is it took them 2 hours to notify, I think it was the NTSB, Took them 2 hours. I mean, look, when something like this happens, you got to notify everybody and their mama. But it shouldn't have taken 2 hours. 1 hour, okay. But 2 hours, especially when you have to have a response team. 2 hours is way too long. And then for that response team, whomever it was, decided, oh, we just blow it up. Dude, this is not that. And if you don't burn it off properly, you just made a bigger mess. And that here is what they did, because usually you could just burn this stuff off, whatever, keep it moving. But look at the smoke. Go back and look at the smoke. That was from the chemical burn off, because you have all of those particles, because that smoke was so black. That means that it wasn't clean. It wasn't not burning clean. So what was rising in the air was the dioxins. It's in the water table. And matter of fact, you can see the clouds in some of the pictures. Somebody was in an airplane flying over the area and they shot down on the cloud. And it looked like I can't even explain it. It looked nasty. Big black blob in the middle of white clouds. It's just nasty. And it's falling on people. It has fallen on people. And they don't even know that they've been contaminated. And you might not even know for the next few years. You got people in the area saying that they've had chickens and animals and farm life die off. There was one lady who came on and said, if it killed my chickens like this, what is it going to do to me? Or it's just a matter of time. But right now, these guys are being evacuated, if you will, from the general area. I believe from what I read, it was at least a mile into Pennsylvania. East Palestine, Ohio is right on the border of Pennsylvania and Ohio. And they said it wasn't a big thing, but you're talking about vinyl chloride. You're dealing with a situation right now. And they're talking about if you can smell it, oh yeah, you're going to smell a little something in the air. Dude, if you can smell it, you're contaminated. Get out. I don't even know what's going on, but what happens in these situations, y'all better watch out, because Norfolk Southern and your government, you gotta put your eye on them, because what happens is when you have a situation for which somebody has to leave town in a situation just like this, government usually comes in, or a big company usually come in, just buy up all the land. Don't sell your stuff. Don't sell your stuff. Make them pay. I mean, if you sell your stuff, make them pay Big Willie money for it. The conspiracy guy in me says, you know what? A few more of these and you're going to have to move everybody into the cities, because the countryside is going to be destroyed because of this stuff. Look at the areas affected. If that stuff went downstream, it's going to affect every state between Ohio and Louisiana. And because they're shipping it into like places like Michigan and Indiana, if something happens and it escapes or something like that, I mean, it's a mess, and it ain't going nowhere. So I'm just going through these articles, and people's livelihoods will change, and Norfolk Southern had better fit the bill. We don't have time for political bantering, even though it has occurred. The governor looks bad. The safety guy, I can't think of what is his name? Buttigieg or somebody like that. I can't think of his name. He looks bad. Biden looks bad. Trump showed up, dropping water everywhere. I mean, y'all gonna let Trump show y'all up like that? That's funny. Y'all be careful out there. And if you're on the East Coast, you need to understand what just happened or what continues to happen. I would hope that everybody would have their water tested continuously. Because if this stuff is in the water, it's in your plants, it's in your food, it's in your pets, it's in your animals. Don't be surprised when you start seeing die-offs in the woods, around the woods, because it is already happening. Y'all be careful out there. This is Brother Marquis on firebackradio.com.